Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, whatever the time happens to be for you. And welcome our talk today on ICAM optionality for world-leading financial institutions. If you have questions about what that means and like what we're trying to convey in this, hopefully we can, before Andrew and I jump in, we can kind of explain it really briefly, give you a little bit of context setting for what we're going to talk about. And it's really about choices. So when you design an infrastructure, when you design a workflow, when you design an authentication pathway, you're an architect, you're a designer of a house, let's say, and you need a door, and you're gonna have to pick the kind of door that works best with the workflows for, whether your family or whether you have a dog or whether you have, large garage doors that you need to pick your door basically. The question of optionality is going to come into play about like which of these doors can I actually use? They're all the same. They all do the same thing. And then if I sort of put a different lens on it and I look at it from a digital perspective, I can literally put any door on. It's like, I like this image from Monsters, Inc. There's like literally any kind of door you can imagine, not just a front door, but closet doors and basement doors and back doors. So this is all really about how do I choose sort of the right door, basically. How do I pick the right door as I'm building this workflow? And not just the right door, but for the right person too. You might be the IAM architect. You might be the identity architect for your organization. I've got to figure out how to like authenticate all my workers in different field environments, in different office environments, in different settings. I might be an auditor in the organization, right? And I need to figure out how to audit for things. We're going to talk in this talk today about multi-factor authentication and the requirements for phishing resistance. You might have a very specific point of view, the kind of door basically that you need. And then ultimately, if you're the implementer, you're actually implementing the authentication workflow, you might have a sort of a different preference for what kind of door and how that actually works. We're going to talk about putting all of these choices together and imagine sort of a world, if you will, where there was not a wrong choice. And that's really what optionality comes down to. Every choice can actually be the right choice. So that's what we're going to kick off in just a few minutes. I will turn it over to my partner, Andrew Wung. We'll do a little bit of intro and jump into it.
Great. Thank you, Michael. And welcome everyone to our session, ICAM Optionality for World-Leading Financial Institutions. I'm Andrew Wong, Product Marketing Manager here at Axiad. I'm joined by Michael Thielander, a Senior Director of Product Strategy at Axiad. Today, we're kind of tackling how financial institutions can rethink optionality, rethink the entire identity, credential, and access management space so that they have the option to use any tool, platform, or vendor that they choose. At the end of this webinar, we're going to be taking questions. So if you have any questions, please type them into the chat box and we'll answer them at the end of the session. With that, I'll turn it back over to Michael to start us off.
Great. Thank you very much, Andrew. During this presentation today, or at the end of this presentation, we're going to look at some resources. And one that I'm particularly pleased to offer and bring up is this report, Market Guide for User Authentication, written by Ann Dallin and James Hoover, two analysts at Gartner. For the first time in, maybe not the first time ever, but the first time in a very long time, we have the availability of this report for everybody that attends this particular webinar. This is very germane, and some of the things, some of the points that we're going to bring up, some of the options that we're going to bring up, some of the design choices we're going to bring up are part of this report. And one of the things that I want to focus on is in this report, again, we'll give you a download link later in the presentation. This is a call out, I think, on about the 6th page. In all authentication contexts, IAM leaders will architect for optionality. And that struck me as being not just particularly true, but very insightful for what the changes in authentication require. It used to be that everything was kind of ubiquitous. You were going to architect for a password-based workflow and authentication and use your IDP of choice, whether that's RSA or Entra ID, and that's what you were going to build. That's what you were going to do. Well, now optionality enters in. And in this talk today, we're going to break it down into 3 areas. We're going to talk about financial institutions as a group, and not just banks, but sort of the broader superset of financial institutions and what that means. We're going to talk about this journey from IAM to ICAM, like identity, credential, and access management, and what that actually means and how we rethink our authentication workflows and the user experience. And then lastly, we're going to talk about optionality and try to put some legs on it, make it actually fit. How do we use optionality to our benefit? So that's what the talk is going to be today. We think it's going to take probably about 30 minutes to go through. There are some great resources at the end of it to download. But for now, let's focus on financial institutions. Regulatory oversight is obviously incredibly important for financial institutions, right? So we're going to talk about which regulations cover financial institutions, which of those regulations say anything about multi-factor authentication, or more importantly, phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication, because that's going to come right around to the question of what do we mean by ICAM, what is identity, credential, and access management. So when we talk about these institutions, it's obviously banks that we're used to seeing all the time when we used to go to banks in person, which we don't anymore, but also large insurers, right? Insurance companies kind of fit in that financial institution model, that bucket, if you will. We also have mortgage lenders. Mortgage lenders are a big part of that financial institution space. And then we have this whole swath of other kinds of insurers, large-scale insurers, health insurers, or even property insurers. They're really, for our considerations today in a lot of financial analysis, they're considered a financial institution. They're governed by a lot of the same requirements. They have some of the same challenges in terms of security of their IP, infrastructure they can use, also mix of different kinds of infrastructure. And then if that's not complicated enough in this picture of financial institutions, there's also just sort of different kinds of groups. There's obviously large credit unions. NFCU is probably one of the most famous credit unions that there is. H&R Block, somebody that does financial planning for you, or a Charles Schwab, or people that handle money. All of these are, for our purposes, a financial institution. And all of these are covered by a set of standards, federal standards called the FTC safeguards. Let's break into this question about regulations right now and see what it says.
To watch the full video, click the link below to our Bright Talk channel. For more Axiad content, click subscribe.